Meep Meep. And hello, everyone. Welcome into another episode of Meep Meep Nation. It's Meep Meep Monday. We're back with another episode. Yes, we did miss out on it last week. Someone had the sniffles. I won't say who, but we're going ahead and get back with another episode. We got the whole crew here for the first time ever on this podcast. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for supporting us on that first episode. We're back and ready. We're recharged and ready to go. It's October. It's spooky season. And with that being said, make sure you check out our website at meepmeepnation.com. Have a great site up, a great shop up, I should say. Mia Krasinski, her pink out shirt. Make sure you get that before the Pink Out game on October 22nd. You can get that on our website at meepmeepnation.com. Hey, while you're there, go ahead and hit like and subscribe on YouTube, or head us over on Facebook or Twitter. Hit that follow and subscribe as well. We are always dropping something every single day about UTSA. Meep Meep Nation, your source for all things Roadrunner. I got Jeremy and Caleb here with me today, and we're going to break down a lot of things. We're going to talk about the non-conference schedule, what it looked like for UTSA football so far. We're going to take a step forward and look into the American, the brand new conference for football. We got a couple other things, and then we had some really fun questions over on our Twitter that we're going to get to at the end of the episode. So before further ado, before I continue and just keep blabbing on, Jeremy, welcome to the podcast. This is the first time we've seen you in here. So, hi, Caleb, how you doing? But Jeremy, what's going on, man?
Hey guys, how's it going? Yeah, so I guess the secret Illuminati behind UTSA Meep Nation is finally revealed. After a decade, 10 long years, we finally have faces to the account. So no more hiding. But yeah, it's good to be on here and looking forward to growing the podcast.
Shadows a little bit there. I see with the lighting. I think that's just your inner spooky season there. You releasing your inner October. That's all good. Caleb, what's going on, man? Welcome to the Meep Meep Monday Part 2.
Glad to be back. Part 2. Let's go.
All right, perfect. Well, let's just get right into it. We've got a lot of things to talk about. Again, please go ahead, join the conversation with us. We want to be able to do that. That's the biggest thing that we want to do with this conversation. So whether you're listening in podcast form, we thank you. But if you're over on YouTube, that's really where we're trying to grow this page. So please get on over to YouTube, hit like, subscribe, leave some comments over there, some questions, comments, all that. We're going to get back to you, whether it's myself, Caleb, or Jeremy. Maybe all of us will get an answer and get a conversation going over there as well. We're really trying to grow that page. So help support, as you guys have done so much on Facebook, Twitter, and everywhere else, Instagram as well. All right, let's talk about this non-conference review for UTSA football. Obviously, guys, this is not the way we wanted to start this season. If we're going back to the offseason, I'm looking with the shades on, the cigar, the gangster look, walking me with a limp maybe, and saying that this team is going to be New Year's Six Bowl without question. I had that feeling. Now, that is, let's be honest, that's pretty much out the window with the 2 losses already. But we're at a record in 0-0 right now when we get to the American. But that's for another conversation here in a couple minutes. Let's take a look back at how this non-conference looked. We got a win against Texas State, a loss against Army, and then a loss against $1.6 million of love in Tennessee. Jeremy, I'm going to start with you. What was your takeaways from the non-conference schedule? Take it as you will, how you want to, carry from it or how you want to talk about it. But what was your overall thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think having followed UTSA for like the past 10 years, I've always been somebody who drinks the Kool-Aid every single season, before every season. Even if we were coming off like a really, really bad season, I'm somebody who's going to be really hopeful going into the next season. And so when you're back-to-back championships, like, yeah, you're going to be expecting nothing less than a New York Six Bowl, possibly an undefeated season. The only loss I thought maybe would happen was Tennessee. And so being where we are right now with an only win against Texas State, it's not what I expected, right? It's definitely emotionally kind of draining. But like Trailer said, we're going into conference. We're 0-0. Our goal of being back-to-back-to-back conference championships is still there. And I'm still a firm believer that we have the talent, we have the skill to do that again. Like, there's nothing I've seen within the AAC where I'm like, we can't compete with that at all, right? But I think there's definitely some changes that have to be made. Obviously, we lost a couple of key pieces last season. Will Stein, going to Oregon was the biggest one probably, and you can see how well they're doing right now. I mean, in my opinion, they should be like top 3, top 4 teams right now in the complete league. But beyond Will Stein, we also lost Franklin going to Ole Miss, and so these are some key components that can definitely make a difference. But I think we still have enough talent and enough skill to definitely play with anybody within our conference. The key is going to be really not doing what we've been doing the past couple of games. And obviously, look, you're playing against Tennessee's. There's only so much you can do when you got guys who are completely all 5 stars, and they've just got access to the best of everything. We had a fighting chance, but unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to lose to them. But beyond that, I think there were a few games where I thought, man, it hurt a lot. Obviously is a gut punch because that was supposed to be a revenge game. It's like, hey, you lose by like 1 possession. It's not fun, right? And especially knowing that we're not going to play them again in the future, at least we're not scheduled to, that definitely hurts a lot mentally. And so I'm definitely wondering how much of that mentally was being carried by our team going to the next few games. Texas State, man, really happy we beat them. Okay, if we lost to Texas State, that would have been, dude. Okay, all right. There's not a whole lot I could have done on Twitter to salvage that, but really happy we beat Texas State. Tennessee, again, like I mentioned, look, okay, I think that was expected for most of us. I think we did a really good job in the second half. It was almost like a completely different team. And I think, generally speaking, like if we're able to improve from there, again, we can compete with anyone in our conference. Army was personally the one game that I felt most disappointed in. And that's simply because statistically, if you look at the size, the talent, the skill level of the guys on our team, we should have beat them. Like, it shouldn't have been much of a competition. They're a good team, no offense to them. But again, just purely on the stats, we should have beat them. What was really disappointing was the fact that it was a home game and they kept running the same couple of plays. Like, they didn't do anything massively different. They weren't running these huge big brain plays. Like, they were just running the ball. That was it pretty much. And, we had no answer for that. And that was really concerning, like really concerning. If you're at home, you're playing a team like Army, and they're just doing the same thing. They're just spamming the same button every single play, and you're not able to adjust to that. That was really concerning. And so I think going into the Tennessee game, we kind of got a little bit better, a little bit tighter when it comes to defense. But I think, our offense, again, is still struggling. We're still trying to get a groove there. And, definitely missing out on Zakari, and then at least within our current regimen, missing out on Clark, and then having Frank sporadically in and out doesn't help. But going into the conference play, the fact that we're going to have Clark coming in, hopefully, and we're going to have Frank Harris, I think that'll be huge. I think most of the focus when it comes to how we're going to perform compared to our out-of-season schedule is going to really come down to the play calling, particularly on offense.
I really like what Will Stein's doing at Oregon. I know it's a UTSA podcast, but I think we have to let that be known. I went out and said that at some point in probably the next 2 to 3 years, at a very minimum, he will be a head coach in the college football. He's been a master class on at Oregon over there. I just wish that he was still in the blue and orange, don't you think? Caleb, you were at the Tennessee game. You had an opportunity to be in Knoxville for this one. That was, I'm sure, an experience in itself. Lead me up to how the experience was in Tennessee. We didn't get a chance to talk about that last week, all the way up until that first play of the game where Joe Mixon took it to the end zone. That was probably pretty heartbreaking. It definitely was on TV, but what was your thoughts about that experience?
Sure. First and foremost, the fans were amazing hosts. Very kind, willing to help, take group pictures for us. And, part of it probably was they expected to win handily over us and like, oh yeah, hey, hope you enjoy your time here. But just to be able to be in a true bowled out stadium holding 100 and I think it was around 101,000 in attendance. It was incredible to watch.
Yeah, it was really incredible to watch on TV, and they were like different colors, like per section. That was really cool. Honestly, Jeremy, I don't know if you heard this, but I heard it on the broadcast when McNown threw the touchdown. you heard UTSA cheering on TV. The
Oh, yeah.
UTSA fan base was pretty loud on the TV. Caleb, I'm sure you were part of that, doing those cheers. It kind of, let me segue that into that, Caleb. We talk about Frank Harris being injured. Since we're in the non-conference conversation, not only did we see Frank Harris play, we saw Eddie Lee Marburger, and then we saw Owen McCown play. You got to see all of them up firsthand in person throughout the season so far. Let's put Frank to the side for a second just for this conversation, because we know what we have with Frank Harris. We've seen it for the last 7 years. His milkshakes are delicious, right? But take me back to what's ELM and Owen. What's your thoughts on them? Who do you think is QB2 coming into this week against Temple?
That's the big question, right? I mean, against Army, there were certain moments of greatness from ELM, while Owen got to make same huge plays against an SEC opponent in the second half. Mind you, I'm sure against some of their backups, but he looked smooth. He looked ice in his veins. And I mean, I think in the first 3 drives we scored twice. Could be a little more than that, but it seemed like everything was just humming while he was at quarterback. And even if we were at a 3 and out, we were a lot more relaxed the second half, because it was like, okay, well, the alternative was 0 points in the first half versus we've already got 2 touchdowns in the third alone. Let's see what he's got. Let's continue to develop, get some good reps in. I don't know. Traylor's got a really good decision on his hand.
Well, Coach Traylor has something with the McCowns. We all know that from his past in the high school, and then now we see this at UTSA. I'm leaning towards him as the QB2. We'll see. I mean, he has Power 5 experience before UTSA as well. Yes, it was on the 1-11 Colorado Buffaloes last year. Not the same Buffaloes as you're seeing on TV everywhere right now, but still, it's still some experience. And then you get that against the SEC opponent. He looked comfortable. And that was something that was really important. Play calling seemed a little different with him under center as well. So I like what we see from McCown. I will say that whatever is the case between QB2, QB3, obviously Frank's the guy moving forward for the rest of the season. But once we get to 24 and beyond, guys, I feel like we're in pretty good hands for the quarterback room. And I'm sure they're going to add some sort of competition either in the portal or recruiting as well. But I really like what we have for the future.
Yeah, it's a huge relief. I mean, especially if you're a longtime UTSA fan. Since Eric Souza, after he left, UTSA, arguably our biggest weakness has always been trying to find that stable QB who can be there and lead us where we need to be. And we've always sort of been getting QBs who weren't able to do that, or they'll come in and they'll get injured. And so Frank Harris was sort of, that golden child, right? Mr. San Antonio. He comes out of the skyline and he along with Traylor, really turns our program around and gets back-to-back championships. And so being where we are today, I know going into the preseason, I was super hyped up. I was like, man, we're going undefeated. But I knew in the back of my mind that, hey, this Cinderella dream could end literally after this year. We go into next year, we don't have a QB, everything falls apart, right? So that was always in the back of my head. And so that's a huge silver lining, despite the losses that we've had, is knowing that we got 2, in my opinion, both of them, very capable QBs, right? ELM had some really, really great moments against Army. And, obviously Owen in Tennessee, to not play at all this season and then come out in front of 100-something thousand fans in Tennessee, and to perform like he did is huge. So I think there's tremendous amount of potential in both of them. And, once Frank is gone, as much as I hate that he's leaving, we'll be in some really, really good hands.
Yeah, I mean, the quarterback battle next year is going to be intense. I think it's going to be something that we talk about all off season long. Once we get to spring football, I don't think we're going to hear probably who's going to be the starter until we're getting really close to week 0 or week 1, depending on when the schedule comes out for UTSA in 2024. I really do believe that. But why don't we, the 3 of us, why don't we take this non-conference schedule? Why don't we just crumble it in a little ball and throw it behind us and maybe into a trash can and move on? Because now it's time to talk about the American Athletic Conference. For the first time ever, UTSA is going to compete in it. They are the back-to-back champs, yes, but not in the new conference, right? So you kind of have the defending champ in one side, but then again, you're brand new sitting in here. So yes, you can play as the defending champs. Go ahead. We earned that. But at the same time, now you got to earn something different. This record is 0-0 now. It's not 1-3. Okay, let's keep that in mind as we move forward here. And it is Temple week. And let's look into Temple. Temple is a team that just lost to Tulsa 48-26. They've had some ups and downs all season. They are currently 2-3. They have not had a bye week like UTSA has so far. We can get into them a little bit as we go. But before we really dive into Temple, Caleb, I'll start with you. What's your thoughts on getting into the American Conference? I believe it's a step up from Conference USA. I do 100%. I think this is just that next step before UTSA becomes a Power 5 school at some point. It's bound to happen. Vote yes, by the way, students. Okay, vote yes in that new thing coming out. But yes, I do believe that this is the next step. What's your thoughts on the American Conference?
So it's absolutely a step up. It's the reason that we came up there to begin with. With that comes new competition. While we don't have to see Houston, UCF, and Cincy with them going over to the Big 12, we are going to have to see schools with larger resources and more talent, looking at SMU, looking at Tulane, looking at Memphis, mixed with having another service academy we got to mix into the schedule. We just got to be able to rise to the occasion, recruit to the level we want, and we should be able to at least contend for titles in this conference.
Yeah, not only you have to do the service academy with Navy, there's a possibility if once SMU leaves to the ACC next year, Army might come in for football. And we all know that Army has had UTSA's number in the past, especially at the Alamo Dome, which is really crazy to say, but that's the case. Jeremy, what's your thoughts on the American, heading into the American for the first time for UTSA football?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think, nobody was expecting to see the alignments, the realignments that have happened over the past year and are going to probably continue to happen moving forward. But I think, generally speaking, going from Conference USA to the American is a huge bump. I mean, the production quality in itself is huge. And then the level of talent that we're playing against when you've got teams like Tulane, teams like Memphis, is a pretty significant bump from where we were coming at. I think we're more than capable of competing in this conference. However, I will say that the way things have panned out going into week 5 now of play is pretty surprising. Like, if you told me, I posted this on my Twitter yesterday, but if you told me preseason that USF was going to be at the top of our conference or with the most conference wins, I would have blocked you immediately. If you told me that Rice was going to perform the way they've been performing, I mean, they beat Houston. We couldn't do that. If you told me that a team named after a food was going to do that, I would have been like, man, that's not going to happen, And so there's still a lot of big question marks. We've seen some teams that historically have been absolutely horrendous. Man, they turn around overnight. And so kudos to Rice, kudos to UCF, awesome. But it's not what I was expecting. I think initially, looking at our conference schedule, it ends with Tulane, right? And so it was sort of, in my view, okay, we're going to have some difficulty initially, and then it'll get easier. Then you got Tulane. Now that's kind of flipped around. Now it's initially it might be a little bit more easy, and then as we get closer to Tulane, it's going to get harder. It's going to get a lot more difficult. And so, I don't think it's anything that we can't handle if we make adjustments. I think when it comes to skill, talent, veteran experience, we definitely have what it takes to go to the championship. But, again, it's definitely a different environment than what I expected. And overall for the conference, I think it's good. It's good that we got teams that, especially with Rice coming in, right? Initially, people were saying, oh, they're just added on because of academics or because of their endowment. But if you're able to be added on because of that, and then also because you're a pretty dang good football team, hey, man, that only makes the conference stronger, especially with SMU leaving, right? And so, I think generally speaking, as far as the conference, how it looks, I think, I'm really excited. I'm really happy with all these these new up and coming teams that have turned around so quickly. But at the end of the day, I definitely think we have what it takes to be competitive with any of them.
I know it's not a comparison because Conference USA now is like 3.5 teams and then one team like wearing boots in the rainstorm. It's not looking good for that conference, but this is obviously a higher level of competition conference in comparison, all across sports, not just football. I think we're going to see it really in basketball too, which I do think is going to be a wake up call for our programs as well. And baseball, I think baseball is going to be a really big step up as well, which I think is going to benefit UTSA moving forward. So I'm really excited for all of that. With that being said, you mentioned Rice being a good football team. It's got to be because they're giving out $3 students, right, at their stadium. It's got to be the case.
Hey man, $3 beer, that's like the ultimate home field advantage, right? You can't beat that.
Yeah, I mean, we got to go ahead and maybe in our shop we'll start selling fake Rice student IDs. What do you think, Caleb?
Love it. I would love any of the prices they showed on that graphic at the Alamo Dome.
Yeah, I feel I'm excited. Even if it's not $3 beers, I'm excited to get to the Alamo Dome for my first time in 2 weeks from now against UAB. I'm really looking forward to that, an American Athletic Conference game. But first, before we talk about UAB, which is next week, we got to dig into Temple here. If you look at Temple's record, they're 2-3. They got 2 wins, unlike UTSA only 1. But the wins they have, I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys, they're not that impressive. They win against Norfolk State in week 3, 41-9. Sure, that's an FCS team. Norfolk State's not the greatest. I lived in Norfolk, Virginia for about a decade before I just moved. I can assure you, they're not that great. But it's still 41 points. They were able to do that. Week 1, they got a first win against Akron, who's a MAC team. But Akron just lost to 0-4 Buffalo in overtime. Okay, so the wins they have are not super impressive. Yes, they found a way to win in week 1. They still got an FCS win, but they got a loss to Rutgers, who Rutgers isn't that bad this year. I guess we can give a nod there. They kind of had their Tennessee game against number 20 ranked Miami last Saturday. They did lose 41-7. And then the surprising game was just this past weekend, where I know all of us tuned in while we were sitting on the UTSA bye week as Temple played Tulsa. And that was the Thursday night game, so we kind of all had an opportunity to look at that one. And they lose 48-26. My initial thoughts on this one before I hear from you guys is EJ Warner is their quarterback, and he's a sophomore out of Phoenix, Arizona, 6 foot. I think he's not even 200 pounds. He's a pretty lanky dude. He seems to throw the ball about 50 times a game, and he'll be able to get 200, 250 yards. I think he hasn't surpassed 300 yet, but he's known to throw some interceptions, but he's not afraid to risk it all. That's what I've noticed from him. So when I'm talking about this defense of UTSA, last year we had some issues with our secondary. At the beginning of this season, there was a lot of hope of UTSA's defense and how good they looked, especially in that secondary. That question started to come back against Tennessee, against Army. Is it still the UTSA defense of old or new? I think we're going to be able to see that right off the bat as we have the first American foe in Temple, because these guys are not afraid to throw the ball. As I mentioned, they are going to throw it probably 45 or 50 times a game. Jeremy, I'll start with you. What's your thoughts about Temple and what we're expecting from this team?
Yeah, I'll preface this by saying, I'm not going to be here to trash talk Temple. If you're coming in with one win into the conference play, like, you're in no position to trash talk. So I have a lot of respect for Temple. Look, their only losses before Tulsa were against P5 opponents, so that matters, right? They're not a horrendous team by any means. However, I think generally speaking, from a skilled perspective, and then when you actually get into the points, I think UTSA shouldn't have too much of a problem. However, that what you mentioned, Christian, the secondary is sort of my only worry, my only concern, especially when you watch the Tennessee game. Obviously, with Army, right, they were just running that ball right up the middle, and that was a big weak point for us. We weren't able to adjust too much for that. But with Tennessee, essentially, I think what happened was they got a huge lead initially, and they got really comfortable. And at that point, they were like, we don't have anything to lose. Let's just chuck that ball as far as we can, see what happens. And unfortunately, more times than not, they were able to actually gain quite a bit of yardage from that. And so with Temple, if you look at the game, they weren't able to really get the run game going. But their pass game in the second half was really what was actually able to put some points on the board, because the score as it is with Tulsa and Temple, it's kind of disingenuous, because most of the points for Temple came in that second half, I believe, and a lot of that came from the passing game. And so UCLA will definitely have to get their secondary together if we want to stop them. But beyond that, I think unless there's some catastrophic injuries that show up, I think we should be able to take care of business and hopefully get a good morale boost going into the rest of conference play.
Caleb, what's your takeaway from Temple?
I think if we're facing a heavy pass attack and we're not as confident in our secondary, we just got to get in their backfield. We got to utilize the front seven, and I'm not going to say zero blitz them, but pass attack. We're going to need Trey Moore. We're going to need our outside linebackers, defensive ends, really hammer through, get some pressure on them.
Temple's defense has had some struggles when it comes to pressuring the quarterback so far. Only 6 sacks so far in the 5 games. That could come into play when we think about UTSA's offensive line. They had a hard time against Tennessee. They didn't do too bad against Army. They only allowed, I believe, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss when we talked about it in the last episode. But Temple only having 6 sacks on the season and only 1 interception so far on the year as well. So lets you be a little more optimistic about maybe even if there is one more week without a Frank Harris, whoever's under center, maybe it's okay if a couple mistakes are made, because maybe they won't be capitalized, at least in past records if you're looking at this Temple defensively. I'm really excited about this game because it's a new era. Whether you want to look at it from any standpoint, yes, Temple is a team in the past that has been known as a rebuilder. Last year, it was kind of the same concept as well. They're not one of those teams you think of when you think preseason to being at the top of the preseason media polls. But even though they lost that game against Tulsa 48-26, I did see a lot of grit. Even though they only have 6 sacks on the season, I was pretty impressed with their pass rushing. I thought they were doing a pretty good job putting pressure, even though it wasn't on the score sheet wise, on Tulsa's quarterback and the rest of the Golden Hurricanes, if you will. I thought they did a good job pressuring Cardell Williams, even though he did throw for 3 touchdowns in that game. Overall, I think UTSA is going to have their hands full. I think that KLB showed on Twitter this past weekend that UTSA is rolling in as a 12-point favorite in this game for the initial odds. I think that's pretty fair after what we've seen from the last few weeks of UTSA. You also put something out this weekend, Caleb, that with SP plus stats are in the negatives, one of the worst in the country for UTSA. They're not being very productive whatsoever. I think there's a lot of things for UTSA for them to be able to capitalize on in this Temple game. They can easily turn it around, get to 1-0 in the conference, and build a lot of momentum heading in back to the Alamo Dome against UAB. Jeremy, I just rambled a lot. Welcome to the show when I do that. The happens usually around the half-hour mark. What's your takeaways from any more before we wrap up Temple here?
Yeah, no other takeaways. I think, honestly, man, I mean, from what I've seen and with the loss to Tulsa's a great team. They're amazing. I mean, they're going to be probably one of the top 5 teams going to the rest of conference play. And so Temple definitely had their hands full. But I think UTSA, we have the skill, we have the talent, we have the caliber to take care of that. We just, again, have to get that secondary tightened up. And then I think, if we're able to, one of the things that I harped on, I think even on the main Twitter account, was that, look, if we can buy whoever's QB, whether it's Frank, ELM, whoever, Owen, if we can buy them an extra 2 to 3 seconds out there just to figure out what's going on and throw that ball, we're going to get a heck of a lot more touchdowns. And so the fact that Temple seems to struggle with that of putting pressure on the QB, that's a really huge positive of us, even if we are sort of still trying to find our place with the secondary. So generally speaking, yeah, I think we pull out the win. I'm not going to get too cocky again, given our current positioning, but I think we pull out the win, and I think it'll be a good morale booster going into the rest of conference play.
Yeah, I think Temple fans are listening. Go ahead, tag us in on Twitter or Facebook. Let us know you're listening in. We'd love to join along the conversation. And again, we're Jeremy, you say it the best way. We're not here to crap talk, if you will. We're here to have a good time and talk UTSA football, but we'll keep that crap talk into I guess our private messages, right? One more thing, Caleb. Jeremy said it again, and it just makes me excited. After that Texas State game, when Frank went down, Eddie had to come in. We were not very confident about who was going to be under center. After Eddie coming in and not really doing well, we're at the end of that half because he was just thrown in there, right? But that's really the only thing that we got to see from Eddie Lee Marburger. Now we're 2 games past that. We have seen Eddie Lee Marburger. We've seen McCown. We've seen Marburger throw 239 against Army. We saw McCown in one half throw a 170. That position is so much. We have so much more confidence in that position, at least the backup position role, without Frank Harris. So if something does happen to him, because unfortunately he's been dealing with injuries all season long and all off season, what do you think this quarterback position can do as a group, as a unit in the American Conference this season?
I think the number one thing is we've got a great amount of confidence in these guys. They're getting reps that they otherwise wouldn't have been getting without Frank being injured for a bit. So many times in the past with injuries to our quarterbacks, we're throwing in guys for the very first time and expecting them to do it all, and they're not Superman right away, and then we're quick to write them off. We've had some good moments out of both guys, and I think with play calling that's catered to their skill set, I don't see much of a drop off there if the rest of our players are playing how they need to be.
I have a great question that I want to ask you guys, but I'm not going to do it just yet. Maybe I'll wait till a little bit later, but it has something to do with jersey numbers for 2024, but I'm going to save that one moving
Single
forward.
digits.
Yeah. I think that, okay, fine. I'll ask it. Maybe you guys can answer if you want. Let me ask it this way. Will a quarterback wear jersey 2, 1, or 0 next year? And if so, who?
By default, I mean, you kind of have to. Quarterback needs to be the leader, needs to be one of the 2-1-0.
Is it Eddie Lee Marburger? Is it McCown? Is he on this roster?
That's a big question, right? Because I don't believe, like, let's say Frank comes in against Temple. He's healthy. He's fine. God willing, he stays healthy the entire season. Given the play time that Eddie Lee has had and Owen has had, I don't think there's enough out there yet to decide who's going to be the starter, right? And so it might turn out, I mean, I don't know what the whole, the system is like behind the scenes, but in my opinion, I mean, it's completely possible that neither QBs at least initially get it. I think eventually when we do get a QB and we establish whether it's Eddie or Owen or whoever, we establish that this is our guy, then yeah, obviously one of them will get the 2-0 number. But at least for what I'm seeing right now, unless as we progress toward the end of the season, unless we start to give Eddie or Owen a lot more play time, I don't think at least there's a whole lot of consensus yet on who should get one of those numbers.
If we get anyone other than Frank Harris playing quarterback this year for the rest of the year, I say we need to keep an eye and start maybe on the socials as well. Twitter, I think this would be good for Twitter or X. See, Caleb, I told you I'm never going to call it X. We start calling it 2-1-0 watch, though. I think we better start calling it 2-1-0 watch for this season. I think that's something that we can start looking into. All right, we talked about
deflection, Jeremy.
Yeah, I heard it.
Tried to put you on the spot, and you just were like, "Oh, whatever happens. We need to ride with whoever's doing well."
Yeah, I'm great at towing the line, man. I've had too much experience talking to Longhorn and Tennessee fans.
This is that in the shadows thing again, right there. The answers are in the shadows now too. I like it. You know what? That's okay. I'll take that. I'll push a little harder once we get more down the road. But that was a nice way to start it off. That won't be the only time I push. We very loosely script on this show. Firing from the hip is where it's at. So that's the authentic things is what we know that you guys want to hear. You don't want to hear these straight numbers and stats all the time. You guys come to listen to fans talk about UTSA football and really your source for all things Roadrunner. That's what we're here at Meep Meep Nation. All right, we talked about Temple. We talked about how how Jeremy thinks we're gonna win by 60, and then I think the next thing that we need to get into is talking about, and we kind of already did, the health of the stars on this team. Frank Harris, JT Clark, Trey Moore. These guys need to be healthy for the conference. We had a bye week to talk about it. We're going to hear a lot more coming out on Monday and Tuesday from Coach Traylor. And of course, Coach Traylor show back on Wednesday, if I'm correct, right, Caleb? It's back to normally scheduled time. But I do think that when you look at these players, obviously Frank Harris, primary, we need him healthy. Do you think he's ready to go for Temple? Do you think JT Clark is going to play? That's really important. And then Trey Moore is a huge asset on that defense. Having Trey Moore, having JT Clark, having Frank Harris on the field, absolutely paramount. What are your thoughts? And Caleb, I'm going to start with you this time. What are your thoughts about having Frank Harris back on the field this week? We think we're going to get him healthy 100% against Temple.
I don't know that we get him 100% the rest of the year. That's just the unfortunate part. Maybe he does get to 100% and then we don't have him scrambling as much. Anyway, I don't think we get 100% of the production out of Frank Harris that we're used to. And hopefully that should be fine. If we need to lean on the run game, if we need to lean on additional passers, I don't think that we see, if he is on the field, I don't know that we see an entire game out of him. Hopefully we can jump out to an early lead, 2 possession, 3 possession, where we can start sliding in the other quarterback, whoever that may be.
No watch.
In for the rest of the refs, or for the reps. What?
I said 2-1-0 watch. 2-1-0 watch. There we go. See? Put it in there. Jeremy, what do you think about Frank coming up this week?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, man, Frank, Mr. San Antonio himself, right? He's gone through the Darth Vader treatment, right? He's been through so many surgeries. The guy is more machine than man at this point. But I think trying to get into Coach Traylor's head is knowing, after Houston and, going to Army and all of that, and knowing you got Tennessee ahead of you, my thought process is that Traylor's just trying to keep him healthy until conference play. Like, the last thing you want to do is try to make a statement with Tennessee, have your star QB get injured for the whole season. He's completely gone now. And now you got to kind of flounder around trying to figure out how you're going to win in the new conference. And so I might be a little more optimistic than Caleb. Obviously, I could be completely wrong, and there might be a lot more of a conservative take on how he's used. But I think, generally speaking, how I've seen him and how I've heard he's walking around, I think we'll see him quite a bit going into the regular season. And I think, in the games where we are leading quite a bit, I do think, though, he gets pulled pretty early. If we're leading quite a bit and it looks like we're going to win the game, I do see Eddie Lee or Owen getting put in. And, like you said, 2-0 watch. That could also lead definitely to us having a good idea by the end of the season of who's going to get that starting position. I guess my biggest question, again, is with Clark. And that's something where, dude, I posted memes on the main account about it. And, I'm not trying to harp against anyone, but I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. I know Clark had posted a video a few weeks back about how I think he was supposed to play against Army, or it was against Tennessee. Like, he had a date posted up of, like, when he was going to start again. And so I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the injury is just really severe, or maybe, again, Traylor just might be kind of, hey, we'll let the out-of-conference schedule be out of conference and only show all our cards as we go into the AAC. But if he's not playing against Temple, I'm going to be very concerned as to what's going on. But from what I understand, what I've seen on Twitter, what I've heard from other people, fully expect him to be playing in Temple, and I think Frank starts as well. But again, I echo with what Caleb said. I think he will get pulled. Frank will get pulled more if he doesn't absolutely need to be on the field. Because I think at the end of the day, what Frank brings to the field more than anything else, what is one of his biggest strengths, is just his veteran status, right? He is one of the most experienced quarterbacks in all of college football right now. And that means a lot, right? Even if you're on the sidelines, having a guy like Frank there is going to give you advantage. Having a guy like Frank there who's going to be able to tell you, hey, this is what's happened before. Here's how you maneuver around it. That's invaluable. And so I think, we will start to see that towards the end of the season. But again, a lot of this is predicated on the belief that we're going to do well. If we start to lose early in the season, now you throw all of that out of the window. But if we're doing well, we start to really get things gelled into each other. I think we will start to see Frank get taken out a little bit more, and see Eddie Lee and Owen put in more as they prepare them for next year.
Having a mobile quarterback like Frank, even if he's not 100%, would be absolutely crucial to start off this conference. It's something we didn't talk about in the Temple preview, and I think we probably should have brought it up. And it does bring another segue that we probably should talk about. One more thing before we get to the listener questions that we had a plethora of. So we're going to have a nice thing to talk about. But Tulsa ran for 289 yards against Temple last Thursday in the last game. Kevorian Barnes has not hit over 100 yards in the last 2 games. Frank Harris has obviously not been playing either. Not saying that those two go hand in hand, but it does make you wonder, how do we get the running game going? Frank Harris is a good way to start that if he's under center. We need Barnes and need that running game to continue and keep moving. This seems like a good way to start it off after a team that almost allowed 300 yards on the ground against a 3-2 Tulsa team. Now, we all know, as we've mentioned, Tulsa is a very good football team. 90 of those yards came from their quarterback, Cardell Williams, who is very underrated, in my opinion, and absolutely. But they didn't have any 100-yard rusher. Beginning of the season, Kevorian Barnes had 103 yards 2 times and a touchdown. We got to find a way to get him in the end zone. We got to find a way to get him over the century mark. If we do that, I like our chances of winning even more. Caleb, what's your thoughts on that before we get over to listener questions?
I think one of the benefits we're going to get in this game that we haven't for hardly any of the others is the rest and the recovery over the bye week on the offensive line. Hopefully we get our guys right and ready to prepare for a good run game, especially on that right side of the line. We shouldn't have too much trouble on the offensive side. A lot of it will come from the trenches. How recovered are they to get us back to our offensive rhythms that we've enjoyed for so long?
I dig it. All right. Well, here we go. First and foremost, we want to thank you for all of the questions, all the answers you brought in on Twitter when we asked. We only gave a couple hours notice and asked the question about, really just, we want to hear your thoughts, or if you had any questions about UTSA for the week. We said we were recording the podcast a few hours. Comment below your UTSA football / sports related questions you'd like us to discuss and answer. We said the thread closed at 9 p.m. Central Time, and that was 2 hours before we started recording this one. In 2 hours, we got a ton of answers and questions. So thank you so much for that. We're going to answer as many as we can before we wrap up this show. We're going to continue to do this as well week by week. And I'd say, what do you guys think? If it gets too much, we might have to have its own separate episode if we keep getting around, which I'm okay with. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I love that idea, man. I think the whole point of Meep Meep Nation was really to get engagement and to get a community of UTSA fans. And so I think having something dedicated every podcast to answering questions, getting people involved, it's really important. And yeah, if it gets too big, guys, we'll create a separate podcast. No worry.
All right. Well, let me take my hosting hat off and let me answer some questions. Jeremy, why don't you take the charge here, and me and Caleb can have our duties here. Let's see which hat backwards goes up farther and whose forehead gets bigger, mine or Caleb's, when we're having these conversations.
It's impossible to beat my large forehead.
All right, fair enough. All right, well, at least we can have that.
All right, guys, here we go. Just to preface this, we got a lot of questions here, some really good questions. Some people were talking about credentials. When is UTSA Meep Meep Nation going to get us credentials on fields? The right people know, so we're still working through that, but we're not going to address all those questions right now. But other than that, I think most of these questions, some of them are pretty hard hitting, so I hope you guys are ready. But let's go. So from Art Clark, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, what can UTSA do to keep Frank safe and not re-aggravate his current injury? Do you have any thoughts on Owen McCohen and his potential usage later this season? And then how does JT's impending return assist other wide receivers in coverage and open up the run game? So the first question really is going to be, what can we do better to keep Frank safe?
All right, let me start, Caleb. I love this question. So first, Art, thank you so much for this question. What do we need to do to keep Frank safe? Obviously, that starts with the offensive line doing their jobs and taking care of business. But I think that's the easy way, and I'm not going to take the easy way out on that one. I think, and I'm not afraid to say it, I think play calling has to be a little more on the conservative side, if you will. I think we saw this earlier in the beginning of the season, especially in the Texas State game when Frank was dealing with a nagging injury. It worked kind of when he was in the second half. I think you need to find a happy medium with that. I think you need to be able to run the ball when needed with Frank, find some open spaces with him, maybe give him an option, maybe push more towards the RPO instead of complete drawn out quarterback draws or quarterback sweeps. Give him the option, maybe a run pass option out of Frank. So it's not always upping his workload. If that's the case, I think that you could find a way to keep him more healthy. But really, the biggest key is keeping him upright. I think that is the absolute softball answer, but I mean, there's no better answer than that. Don't let him get sacked. Don't let him take hard hits. And you should be able to keep Frank for the entire season and find your way into the American Athletic Conference Championship. How's that for a first answer?
Perfect, man. Perfect. Caleb, you got anything to add to that?
Similar to my answer on the run game. I mean, it's all part of the trenches. Can we buy him time on the passes? If not, can we build in some check down options on the passing game? His runs need an RPO element to it. I think first and foremost, it's all just getting the trenches healthy. We can buy him time. We can establish the run game a little more. Just matters on how we can build up the guys up front.
There we go. Okay. Owen has, really risen as one of the favorites with a lot of the UTSA crowd. I know he's got a ton of support with a lot of players. When he came onto the scene with Tennessee, there were a lot of players that were giving him shout outs. What are y'all's thoughts on his potential usage later this season? Do you see him as being still second string to Eddie Lee or playing alongside him? How do you see that playing out?
I think we see McCown. Hopefully, the only time we see McCown is garbage time for the rest of the year. I mean, that honestly would be a God-given gift if we're being completely honest. But I do think, as of right now, if I'm a betting man, which I'm not, but if I was, I'd say ELM is quarterback number 2, just based on experience and what he did all off season when Frank was injured in spring ball and things like that. And then McCown is still sitting at 3, just because he's the younger talent, and I think that he comes in for the garbage times and things like that. Doesn't mean that Marburger is going to get more playing time than McCown once this is all said and done. I just think how it shakes. If for some reason Harris goes down, I think Eddie Lee's the guy that comes in to take over. If we have garbage time, I think we see Owen come in. That's my thoughts.
I think Owen is the future. I think we might see Eddie at QB2, Temple, and maybe game after that with UAB. But I think we start working our way into having Owen get the QB2 reps in practice and in the games to eventually finish out the season if needed.
I'll go on record to say that I do agree that McCown is the future for UTSA. I will say that, though.
There you go. And I guess I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm still not certain. I think from what I saw with Eddie Lee in Army, and then obviously, Owen playing against Tennessee is huge. I'm still kind of on the fence, but I know at least from the crowd perspective, a lot of people are definitely rooting for Owen. And so, nothing against Eddie Lee at all. I think it's still very much a neck and neck battle. But we're going to see what happens moving on. But it's a good problem to have, I think, because you should say historically, we haven't had a heck of a lot of terrific QBs that we can depend on since Sosa left. And so to be in this position where we have 2 QBs that are definitely capable, it's a good problem to have. And then the last question with Art Clark, and let me say this, I know we got a couple more questions where there are multiple questions in there. Moving forward, if you guys can just have one question, that'd be great. We have a lot of people that are commenting, so we can't take too much time per question. But I'll for now, we'll be pretty merciful and give you guys what you want. The last question was, how does JT's impending return assist other receivers in coverage and open up the run game? And I guess we'll start with Christian.
I mean, I think it's going to be huge. I think that they're going to have to respect the pass a lot more. We saw what it was last year when you had the three-headed monster with Franklin and Cephas and Clark on the field. I think you have that same kind of concept with Ogle Kellogg, and really McEwen has done some fantastic things as well. And obviously, we all know what Cephas has done so far this year. I think it's going to be a really big thing to help these wide receivers. I think the biggest thing it's going to impact, and I think this might be something not talked about enough, is it's going to help Oscar out at tight end. I mean, we haven't seen Oscar do as much as we saw him in the past do. I think he's one of the most underrated tight ends in the country. I've said this for a very long time. I think that him and Frank have an amazing relationship on the field. I'm sure it's off the field. It's great too. But what I saw last year was just impactful. Some of the amazing catches he made really kept UTSA in some of those games. I think of the Western Kentucky game last year as one of them. I think Oscar is going to see the biggest push once JT's back on the field.
With our receiving game, we've got 3 Sunday players. If healthy and humming, they are all 3 Sunday players, and they can only help each other with spreading the defenses out. It's been very surprising seeing how little production we've gotten from Oscar. I imagine it can only help having JT come back, help Cephas out, help any of our other up and coming wide receivers. I mean, that was what made us so great last year. You couldn't dedicate to stopping one specific thing without opening the other. Hey, you want to block all of our receivers? It's possible, but then you open up to our run game. It's just so difficult to be able to stop all 3 of those guys. It will help so much for JT, for Cephas, Oscar, anyone. It's huge.
There we go. Yeah, I completely echo what you guys are saying, especially the stuff with Oscar. I mean, the guy is a walking 4-leaf clover. Like, when you're in a clutch position and you really need him to perform, he's the guy you want to depend on. And so he definitely seems to be that guy, like the ultimate wingman. Like, if you're pumping at all cylinders in every other area, he's the guy who's going to really show up and show out. And definitely one of the most underrated players we have on our team. All right, so yeah, we got another question from Brian De La Rosa. He says, if by the end of the season we, without a reasonable doubt, know that the issues we're facing is a coaching issue, then who's on the radar for OC and DC positions?
All right. Well, thanks, Brian, for your question. I appreciate that. But let's not touch that one yet. Let's move forward. Let's see what the American Conference has in store for UTSA first. We have had some ups and downs so far this year on the offensive and defensive side, but I think that we have a full conference to figure out what we can see. We haven't had a healthy Frank Harris yet. We've had an outstanding triangle of toughness at the beginning of the season. So when you're talking about who's on the radar, no, not yet. Let's see what we got first.
Yeah, and I think I echo exactly what Christian said. I think right now, especially coming off back-to-back championships, we're not in any kind of position where I feel anyone is on an immediate hot seat. I know everyone's got their own personal opinions and thoughts of what should happen, but I think we're early enough right now where we're still conference contenders, and I think we don't have anything where if we don't make some minor adjustments here or there, where we can't compete with everyone on our itinerary. So, but appreciate the question, Brian. Moving forward, we'll be more than happy to reach into it. But for now, we're going to leave that alone. Next question is from Obese. He says, and sorry again if I'm pronouncing any of y'all's tags wrong, but his @ on Twitter is live from UTSA. He says, please speak on how Zakari transferring was a lose-lose breakup. UTSA offense has been bad, and Z hasn't gotten the production he hoped for when he went to Ole Miss. Loaded questions, some hot takes here. Caleb, you want to start on this?
Yeah, Caleb, what you got?
Sure. So I don't think it's quite a lose-lose situation. While everybody wants to find out who's the winner and the loser of a breakup,
wait till Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift break up. All right. All right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Zakari having his knee scoped. I think this was the first game he was actually able to play. So he was probably on limited reps this last week. And when he got mind you, he got one catch for 7 yards, but the knee scope was from his injuries sustained over the course of his time at UTSA. So he's at UTSA. Okay, well, he's also going to probably get his knee scoped while he's here too, and still just be coming in for what would equate to our bye week and be coming in the first time for the Temple game. I don't think that you can declare a winner or a loser there yet. UTSA, it absolutely hurts losing that kind of production, but at the same time, we get a chance to utilize some of our younger receivers, see what we have. I don't think that you can truly declare winners and losers in that situation.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll go a little farther on that though, and first agree with you that this would be the first time we'd be seeing Zakari as well this week against Temple. We'd have Zakari and JT back at the same time. But in case of lose situation breakup, yeah, it hurt UTSA, no doubt about it. But Zakari probably got a pretty nice NIL deal. Let's be honest. He moved to an SEC team. Okay, so I'm pretty sure he's not losing in that standpoint. But if you want to maybe take a retroactive kind of conversation and look towards the future, if you will, Zakari's snap percentage on the field is probably going to be a lot lower at Ole Miss this season than it would be if he was playing at UTSA. So take that as you will for a guy who is probably going to be a professional football player at some point. Is it going to help his usage? Is it going to help his stock? Who knows? But in that case, I would say it's a lose-lose situation for a guy who's trying to make it to the next level, someone who could shine and did shine under a Coach Traylor offense.
Yeah, I think I echo what you guys are saying. I mean, I'm never going to rag on any of our players. At the end of the day, these are young dudes who are, trying to juggle school and playing out there on the field. It's not an easy thing to do. And if I was in their position and some school came up to me with a potential 6-figure check, asked me to play with them, man, I don't know, man. I might go for them. And so, no flames on Zakari. I think at the end of the day, yeah, I do echo what Christian was saying, where he's probably going to get less playing time, and that potentially might hurt his perspective when it comes to NFL recruits coming in, compared to, I guess, being in the top 3, right, of receivers at UTSA. But at the end of the day, again, it's still really early in the season. He's coming off an injury. It's completely possible for him to start to move up those ranks while he's at Ole Miss. And at the end of the day, wish nothing but the best for him. Hope he's able to make it to the big time and play on Sunday.
And I would say the Ole Miss brands kind of like Meep Meep Nation, but for Ole Miss, they probably sell crop tops too. So that probably also is a big deal.
Yeah, there you go. We got some Leslie. You've been asking for crop tops every weekend, so we're working on it. We promise you. That might be the one thing keeping us from getting the credentials we need. So we're going to work on that and try to prioritize that as much as we can.
Caleb, are you going to wear a crop top when it comes in? Or?
I think that's the fear on why they're not credentialing us, is because they're worried I'm going to wear a crop top on the field.
It is spooky season.
All right, guys. Yeah, we got some hot questions here, but I'll try to jump to a little bit of a cooler one. All right, so Ollie asks, why are we a school who locks new Adidas gear to athletes only and stops selling them to the public? So I guess, Caleb, you can lead with this one. You know a lot of the issues we face when it comes to our gear and branding. Yeah. What are your thoughts behind it?
Yeah, so Adidas is going to always have exclusive team gear that fans aren't going to get the chance to get right away. Sometimes that gear makes it out to the team first, and then after a period of time, they can make it available in the bookstores or at different sites that carry UTSA. Unfortunately, it always seems to take a really long time with UTSA and getting that gear out in the bookstores and everywhere else. That could be Adidas. That could be with our distribution. It could solely be the bookstore. But it's definitely on par to have team gear exclusive stuff first and then later have it available to the public. We just don't know how long it's going to be before that time is.
Yeah, I'm really hoping we get that figured out because, I mean, the Rowdy Head logo, it's, objectively within all of college football, it's one of the most classic, in my opinion at least,
I
logos
love
out
it.
there. It's so clean,
Yeah.
so sharp, so unique. And I think there's just so much stuff you can do with that if you're, creative and wanting to really push that out there. But all right, Christian, I'll put this question to you next. Hector asks, what do you think of the current state of our offensive and defensive line? And do you have any optimism for recruits at these positions? After all, the trenches are really important.
Trenches are very important. I mean, you look at not just UTSA schools, but you look at like a school like, let's talk about the one that's always on TV right now, Colorado, right? The trenches are what's hurting that team. They have all these amazing skill players, and everybody keeps talking about players like Deion Sanders and what he's doing at that school. But the offensive line, defensive line is what's holding them back from winning against Will Stein's Oregon and USC. But in the state of UTSA, when looking at the offensive line, I'm very hopeful. I like what I see from there. Obviously, injuries are impacting us right now, especially with Hart being out. But when Hart was in, Kavarian Barnes had 100 yards every game and a touchdown. Yeah, those two go hand in hand? I hope not, because Hart's going to be out for still a couple more weeks, and I want to see Barnes go back over 100 yards. Defensive line, I'm hopeful again, but I have a couple more question marks, only because we have a couple guys who are older on that line, and I think we've seen peaks and valleys so far with this season. I think it's an entire defensive problem. I don't think it's just defensive line, but we've seen peaks and valleys with this defensive squad, up and down. When you talk about, and Hector, I think you made a really good point at the end of your conversation. You said, after all, the trenches are really important. I think that's where you need to focus more of maybe your recruiting or your NIL money when you're talking to the transfer portal about building up those trenches. I think we're starting to notice that how impactful that is the higher the level you go. And obviously stepping up to the American, that's another level of how important that is to have not just your starting offensive line and defensive line, but depth behind it. And I think, we're talking about when injuries occur, can somebody step right in and take care of that conversation and take care of that position? We see it with against the Tennessee game, right? They had some big boys on that defensive line, and they took care of the offensive line for UTSA quite well. They had no problem against Army when there was weight requirements and the players were only 250 pounds soaking wet wearing boots in the rain. But when you go ahead against an SEC big boy that can be 340 pounds and still be able to run a 40 in under 5 seconds, yeah, we got a problem. So either way, you're in a hotbed of recruiting in the state of Texas, especially in San Antonio and the surrounding area. Coach Traylor's done a fantastic job recruiting in the past, everywhere, every position. But I do think that there needs to be a smaller push towards the focusing on offensive and defensive line in the trenches. And I would even say even more towards the offensive line. I think that's the biggest concern on this entire team moving forward is the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, offensive line, they're always lacking on praise, but you're always quick to criticize them when they're missing.
Unsung heroes.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Caleb, I'll let you start this one. A question from Braden Norris. From a non-UTSA fan, what's the next 5 to 10 years look like, man? Honestly, I don't see a reason why you can't be moderately respectable and expect to win bowl games year in and year out. Is the money coming in from boosters? Will you pay up for coaches? Will NIL be a problem? So a bit of a tongue-in-cheek question right there, but yeah, I guess Caleb, I'll let you lead on this one.
We should always expect to get to the bowl games. Hopefully we get to a point where we can expect to win those bowl games. that's that next big step, right? As far as NIL being a problem, I mean, it's all relative, right? Are we ever going to be able to compete with Texas and the powers in the conference or in the state? No. Are we going to be able to compete with all the lawyers up in Dallas with SMU? Likely not. If NIL is that big deciding factor, but can we get to a point where we're battling with Houston Possibly. I mean, we are the only FBS school in the city of San Antonio, growing metro. If we can rally the support of our city, not just around NIL, but funding the program as a whole, getting venues, writing the check for staffs, everything that your typical program is going to be looking for, we should be able to compete in this conference for the foreseeable future.
What we saw in this last 2 years, especially with the transfer portal, is people that are in the state of Texas that leave the state of Texas initially for top schools want to come back eventually. And a lot of that time, UTSA is a really good landing spot for that. That's what we've noticed. And I think that's going to continue. And that's something as a strength that I think UTSA should really hold on to and not let go. Be proud of that strength. You know, it's a competitive advantage that you don't really have to compete against those SMUs in Texas for the most part, right? Next 5 or 10 years, I think that the American is just another landing spot in the game of college football Frogger for UTSA. I think we are bound for whatever a power conference is, whether it's power 3, power 2, power 8. I don't know what it's going to be in 5 to 10 years. Who knows with all these realignments, but I do feel that where we are right now isn't the end for UTSA, and we're going to be in a power status moving forward. And that's only going to make recruiting in NIL and all that stuff even bigger. I know the boosters are fantastic around here. Runners Rising is a fantastic one that I see all the time on social media and what they do, big things for UTSA. So expect to win a bowl game is the thing that you should highlight, put in bold, because yes, expect to win it. It's not going to take 5 to 10 years, folks. We're going to win a bowl game this year. It's going to happen. No doubt about it in my mind. Okay. And we're going to make it to a bowl game too. I saw somebody on social media there say, are they even going to make a bowl game? Yes, we're going to make a damn bowl game. All right. Calm down. But thanks for your conversation. And you said you're not a UTSA fan. I after you hear this conversation, I recommend that you change your ways and birds.
I think Braden might be a Cougar fan, so he's still riding on that win. But appreciate your question, Braden. I think I would echo with what they say. I do think that within the 5-10 years, whatever the power conference looks like, whether that's P4, P5, P2, I do think that UTSA has a potential ceiling for that. How many years it takes, I can't tell you. San Antonio, we've got the Spurs, and then we've got UTSA football. Like, those are the two biggest athletic teams in our city right now. And at least from my experience with San Antonio sports, unfortunately, while we are the 7th largest city, we are also home to a lot of fickle fans. So while we can get a lot of progress, it can get erased really quickly. And so that's not to say and cast a shadow upon, our whole team, our whole league. It's just to say that, the team needs your support. And I know we already have a lot of NIL donations and a lot of big supporters for the team and for the school. And I think if we can just keep having at least some level of success to what we've had recently, 5-10 years, man, that's more than enough time for us to really reach some pretty high levels. So great question, Braden. Like Christian said, hope you can become a UTSA fan too. And so to go from that, Caleb, like, I know you work with Runners Rising. What are some ways that we can help the team? What do they do? What are ways that we can help UTSA during this short-term down period that we're going through?
I definitely recommend write the check to Runners Rising. They support all sports athletes, connect local businesses and such with them. They've got athletes of the month. Not a single penny goes to anyone working there. We're all volunteers, just here to support UTSA athletes. Fantastic organization.
There you go. Appreciate it, Caleb. So our next question comes from Irish Rowdy. He asks, if you are looking for a non-sports topic, what area outside of San Antonio is the most important / largest hub for UTSA alum? So, basically, where are most of our alum coming from? The Valley, Houston, Austin, DFW. Caleb, I know, you might have a better understanding of this. What are your thoughts on that?
I would assume Houston is our largest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
Yeah, I'd
assume so
probably
too.
echo
I'm
that.
not sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I
so.
think like when I was in undergrad, like at least 50-60% of the kids I met were all from Houston. So that's what I would assume. But yeah, probably Houston. It would be interesting to see what the tally was at the UH game. How many UGC fans were there as opposed to Cougar fans? I'm not sure what the exact numbers were, but I know there was a pretty good UTSA presence. We sold out our allotment pretty quickly. Next question is from the Rivalry Podcast. Huge shout out to these guys. They've been huge supporters of us ever since they started. You can find them at RivalPod on Twitter. Their question is, what's the ceiling for this team coming out of the bye? And Christian, I'll let you start off with this.
Well, shout out to the Rivalry Podcast. Yeah, you guys have definitely really supported us for a very long time. I'm definitely starting to notice that as well on the socials. Ohio State, Michigan. That's the podcast. They're a fun group of guys over there too. They're a fun listen. But what is the ceiling for this team coming out of the bye? I mean, you know what my answer is going to be. I'm riding high, man. I'm not afraid to be that guy that can turn the blinder, this one on Army, and turn this blinder on Houston, Tennessee. I'm just counting my bills. But with that being said, there is no reason why you can't still have the expectation that UTSA can find themselves in the American Athletic Championship game. There's no reason why you can't find that. If you, especially now, and it was like Frank Harris can lead us there. Yep, Sub-Zero can do it, absolutely, and I think he still can. But even if something does happen to him, I'm so much confident in what we have behind him now. The defense has shown signs that they can do it. The wide receivers are not even at their pinnacle of what they can be all year. Kavorian Barnes is going to do what he needs to do. He's going to get back into that promised land over the century mark. So I do believe that this team, and I think this adds to another question you have later on the mailbag. What is the ceiling for this team coming out of the bye? And you talk about this. I think there's one more that is kind of like the same question in there. But the ceiling is undefeated in the American Conference.
Yeah, Caleb, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so agreed. Nobody that we're playing against, it looks unbeatable.
Agreed.
They've all shown signs of weaknesses here and there, and if we correct a lot of our weaknesses over the course of this bye week, there's nothing to say that we can't finish undefeated. As our ceiling, we can absolutely go undefeated. It's still out there.
And let's remember, this is the same team that in the offseason we were screaming, this is a team that could upset Tennessee, that should be an NY6 Bowl. This is that same team. They just had a rough start, and that was because of injuries and things like that. Now we're heading into conference play, and Coach Traylor has definitely sat out some of his star players waiting for this to happen, making sure they're healthy. They're coming off a bye, which is perfect timing, if you ask me, and getting ready for the first time to be in the American Conference. I think we're in for a treat come Temple. I think we really are. I think we're going to see exactly what we expected all season long, getting ready for this one this Saturday. I really do.
Yeah, completely agree with you guys. I think there's nothing I've seen from our team so far where it's like, hey, a significant drop with what we expected. Obviously, the outcome, the numbers on the stats, the numbers on the scoreboard, it's not exactly what we want to see. But, keep in mind, Frank Harris has not been in all the time. One of our top weapons in Clark has not been in. And the mistakes that we've made, a lot of these possession games, it's something that is not a skill issue or a talent issue. It's just trying to get some of those rough edges smoothed out. But appreciate the question, Rival Pod. Always love your guys' support. Let's go to the next question. It's from Ariana Guzman. Asked a few questions, but I think we've kind of answered some of them previously. So we'll go to the one that we haven't. And either one of you guys can take this. Caleb, if you feel more comfortable living in San Antonio taking this, feel free to. Do you consider USF's Riverwalk a real Riverwalk?
Ooh.
Absolutely not. I don't care. I do not care that USF's Riverwalk might actually contain a real river. It's just a walkway. And I guess to a degree you're walking along a river, but no, absolutely not. Doesn't even compare to San Antonio's. Get it out of
There you
here.
go. There you go. Christian, do you guys have Riverwalks out there on the West Coast?
Oh, I mean, I'm staring at the ocean. Does that count? Other than that, no, not really.
There
No,
you
that
go. There you
Riverwalk thing
go.
is so cool, though. It's one of the things that just really stick out. And even if you don't know much about UTSA and San Antonio, it's something that you need to look into, because once the first time that I really noticed it or was aware of it, I mean, that's something that I want to see firsthand now.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, the Riverwalk to me, man, when you say Riverwalk, it's not San Antonio's Riverwalk. It's the Riverwalk, right? That's what we call it. And so,
Fair,
yeah,
fair enough.
there's no second to us. It's just the Riverwalk. Sorry, USF. I know you guys are leading the conference, but we got to punch up right now.
For now. For
Um,
now.
all right, all right. Super P West, is that right? Super P West on Twitter asks, in all caps, by the way. So he's shouting this: UGA football conference championship future, as well as bowl eligibility future prediction. I assume that's a question. Maybe it's a statement, but I guess he's asking, hey, I guess we can try to concentrate this down to what are your thoughts on bowl games? Do you guys have any bowl game predictions? Maybe where you'd like us to see now that unfortunately a New Year's Six bowl is probably off the table.
I would just like to see us not play in the middle of December. I'd like to see us play closer to the holiday, no matter what that is. Sometimes that means a better bowl, sometimes that doesn't. Look, when you're not, you have a whole bunch of bowl games. You have the NY6 bowls, and then you have the college football playoffs. It doesn't matter if you're playing in the Chester's Cheeto Bowl or the USF fake Riverwalk Bowl. It doesn't really matter what you're playing in. As you make a bowl game, you made it over 6 wins. You did a fantastic job, and you have a chance to not only make more money for your school and your athletic program, you have a chance to have some bragging rights and hopefully get a bowl win. Looking at you, UTSA, let's get that done this year. And I think they do. And I think Super P West did a good job, even though Jeremy didn't. He didn't scream this one like he should have, since it was in all caps. I think it was, whether it was a question or a statement, either both can be true. I do believe that we're going to see UTSA in the conference championship game this year. I'm going to hype it. I'm going to scream it on the rooftops. Let everyone hear it, but I'll do the boop on the nose and everything. Give me the super bad reference, everything you can. I'm not afraid to say it. UTSA is still that team that we've seen in the offseason. They're still that squad. They still have that potential, and we're going to see it starting this Saturday. Bookmark it. Do whatever you got to do.
Will it into existence, right?
That's it.
Caleb, what are your thoughts?
Main comment on bowl eligibility: just don't give us New Mexico. That's all I'm asking.
There you go. You heard it from Caleb. No New Mexico. No New Mexico. The UTSA Witch asks, Trailer needs to be on the hot seat. He is very well compensated for the lackluster performance against good teams. I'll go ahead and start this one by saying that I don't agree with this one at all. I think if you're a coach that has led a team to back-to-back championships, if you took one season where you absolutely crapped the bed, like I literally don't care. Like you get another shot the next season. So in my opinion, he's not on a hot seat at all in any way. But yeah, Christian, Caleb, what are y'all thoughts?
100%. UTSA, which I really appreciate you chiming in, and I hope you still listen, but I completely disagree with every single letter of your comment there. No, there's no way that he's in the hot seat for everything he's done on and off the field for UTSA. Coach Trailer, we need to wrap him on bubble wrap and never let him go, ever. So no thanks. Nope.
Caleb, thoughts?
That seat's ice cold.
Ice cold.
Ain't no way.
Ice cold.
Further from the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. Like you should say, Wish, we appreciate your support, but I just don't see you going from leading the Battle of the Bands in San Antonio to getting kicked out in one season. I don't think we're going to be able to do that. So yeah, I mean, I really do trust Trailer. I think he's having to handle a lot. I mean, when you lose your chief, offensive coordinator, you lose a lot of people in the equipment room. A lot of different changes are happening. It's not an easy job to have, and so even the past 2 seasons, right? I mean, we're a good team, but you can definitely say that some of those games were one possession games. We could have easily had a much worse record than we did, and that's not an indictment on Trailer. It's just to say that there's a lot of moving parts, and Trailer has done a tremendous job, in my opinion, with what we have to offer. And outside of just coaching, he's been an amazing recruiter, an amazing tool for us to get into San Antonio, get those NIL deals flowing, and start to expand on that. So, I think we're quite a few seasons away from that happening. But UTSA Witch, we appreciate your support, and thanks for asking the question. Last question is from Robert Ruse. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. But he has two questions, actually. I guess I'll start with the hottest one, and then we'll go to the more cooler one and end on hopefully a little bit of a high note. But he said, are UTSA fans in the non-student section too quiet? I know I sit by quite a few. Caleb, I'll definitely bounce this one to you first. I heard a lot about this during the Army game. People were saying that, and the Texas State game too, the non-student sections are way too quiet. They're telling you to sit down during the game. I wasn't there. I'm usually tweeting during the game at home. But what were your thoughts? What was your experience there?
He's probably sitting a far distance away from me because I'm probably 2 sections removed from the student section, and of course when we're down against Army, we might not be as loud, but when we're doing well and we're on defense, that thing is as loud as could be near me.
There you go. Christian, how's it sounded on TV? No additions. Yeah. Everything sounded good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what you hear on TV, the Texas State game was super loud on TV. And I know you saw a couple people on social media saying it wasn't loud. I definitely noticed that for sure. But what I noticed was there was no problem. It was exactly what you expect. But then again, it is TV, so I don't have that firsthand scenario. I'm going to tell you once I get to that UAB game next week that I'll have a full report, and I can't wait for that. But I trust Caleb's word. He's at those games, and he knows that.
To add to that, last week, probably not a whole lot of students traveled over to Tennessee. Thing had 101,000, and we had so many comments talking about how they could hear our UTSA chants from across the stadium.
You could hear it on TV too, and you could hear those on TV. So I will say that. So whatever's the issue there, or whatever your thoughts on the student sections or non-student sections being too quiet, I'm not seeing it. I guess I'll let you know in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think I echo what you guys are saying. I haven't gone to any games in person yet. Everything I've watched has been through the television while I tweet out and troll people. But I think I think what we have more than a loudness issue is really more of a coordination issue. You go to the Tennessee game, right? They've got sections where everyone's only wearing one color. If you went to like an A&M game, if you've ever been to Kyle Field, like how honed in they are to their cheers and how they do it. I mean, these guys have practice before their game night, even on how they're going to cheer. And so I think living or playing at the Alma Dome, I've tweeted this before. The Alma Dome is one of the greatest assets that UTSA football has, right? It turns a crowd of 40K into sounding like you're 80K, right? And if you have 70K, like God knows how loud you sound then. But I think the biggest weakness we have is just we're a new team. We don't have a tremendous amount of very established cheers, established culture as far as the on-field environment goes and the sand environment goes. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement. And I think, I'd be really encouraged if we were to work something out where, maybe we do have some sort of cheer practice, or we do have some sort of established tradition beyond just waving the flag going into the fourth quarter, where it's like, hey, these are the cheers we make when we make them, what we do. But I think, at the end of the day, I don't think it's a loudness problem. I think it's really more a coordination problem. And I'm sure, you probably do have some bad apples in there, but I think our issue is more coordination. And if we can get that down, man, and if we can win for the next few seasons and we can start to fill the Alamo Dome up, I genuinely believe that, we can be the loudest stadium in college football. I really do believe that. Whether that happens in the next couple of years or the next 10 years, I think being in the Alamo Dome, it's one of the biggest advantages. I mean, who else has a dome stadium like we do? Syracuse, maybe, but it's not even that big. It probably doesn't have the acoustics that we have. And so if we're able to fill it with, 75K, 70K UTSA Roadrunner fans screaming in unison, like, dude, you can't buy a better home field advantage than that. But good question. Thanks for asking that. Last question that Robert asked was, can UTSA run the table until Tulane? I know we had some wild cards out there. Nobody was expecting USF and Rice to sort of perform the way they've been performing compared to previous seasons. But what are y'all's thoughts, going into Tulane? You think we're going to run the table, or are there any games in particular that worry you?
If you want to keep hearing me hype it, I will, but I don't say until Tulane. I say through Tulane.
There you go, Caleb.
Same.
Okay. Yeah, and I echo what they say, guys. Like, I think Temple's going to be a big litmus test, obviously, to see how we perform, and after that bye week, see what a healthy or relatively healthy UTSA squad plays like. But beyond that, guys, appreciate all your questions. If I happen to miss any of your questions, know that it wasn't on purpose. There were some questions here that we're asking about credentials, on-field credentials and stuff. We're working on that. The people who need to know, and hopefully we can have some updates for you later on. But yeah, moving forward, again, we'll try to include this in a podcast, and if we need to have a separate podcast, we'll do that as well. But I'll pass this on to Christian to close us out.
Definitely, I think we're going to have the separate episode if we're going to have these amount of questions, which I hope we do. Yeah. And if that's the case, then we'll still, when we all meet up before we get our Meep Meep Mondays, we'll just release it the following day. So we'll have Mailbag Tuesdays or something like that, so we can have 2 episodes a week. You're going to get a lot more of that coming anyways. We're just getting started here at Meep Meep Nation. Okay, this is our second episode. It should be our third, but it's our second. Okay, somebody had to get sick, but we are again coming at you every Monday, barring an ER visit. But other than that, we are ready to roll here at Meep Meep Nation. So be sure to find us on Facebook. We're surpassed 20,000 now over on Facebook. Keep that up. We're over 10,000 on Twitter /X and Instagram. You can always follow us there as well. Remember, the pink out is October 22nd for UTSA soccer. So be sure to check us out on the meepmeepnation.com, the shop, and get Mia's shirt. Be sure to get that and support UTSA soccer doing some big things. Basketball season's around the corner. We'll have a preview getting ready for that as well. And of course, we're going to have you covered for all your UTSA football needs. Because remember, this isn't a UTSA football podcast. This is a UTSA athletics podcast, your source for all things Roadrunner. I'm Christian here with Jeremy and Caleb. We're going to be back here next Monday with another episode. But until then, everyone, birds up.
Birds up, guys.
Birds up.
Meep, meep.